I guess this came off the back of a conversation we had the other day, and we were talking about forgiveness and stuff. And I said to you, you're probably one of the very few people I know that actually practices true forgiveness.
That's quite an accolade.
Because
Yeah.
in each element, most people forgive, but they can't move forward. Most people can't forgive themselves and they can't move forward. Most people hold on to resentment, so they can't move forward. Whereas I think with your situation, from what I know anyway, I feel
Mm.
you have practiced and have managed to achieve all of these things. And it'd be interesting to see and speak about how you've managed to do that.
Yeah, I think something you said just now, which was quite interesting, which was people who forgive but can't move forward. And then I feel like maybe they're just through part of the process. It is
Maybe,
a long process. And I think by definition, and then we're going to get into that in a moment, I think, forgiveness is letting go of the past to allow us to be more open to the present, where life can then flow through us. So I think once you fully let go of the past, you will be more open to the present. You'll be able to show up in the now. So therefore, that just something like as a natural consequence, you should be moving forward. So it's kind of, they are two sides of the same coin.
why do you think people struggle even with the first bit of trying to forgive? Because I think the first bit, I think we talked about this before we started recording, the first bit shows up in anger, right? You're just like at a situation or a person or yourself.
If you're lucky, I mean, I think if anger comes in, that's great. I
Right.
think because anger, I think, is a really important step towards forgiveness. It's the acknowledgement that something's been done wrong to you, that you've been violated in a way. So the anger comes in order to set the boundary, to protect you, to
Mm.
give you the energy to make changes. So if you're in the anger, that's a really positive thing, because there's sometimes a danger that people don't even get to the angry bit. They just might be in denial about a violation happening to them, and
That's
they're kind of
interesting.
ignoring what's going on to them. And
More sick.
acknowledge, at least that there's an acknowledgement, okay, there's been some wrongdoing here and I'm angry about it, and that's really healthy.
Okay. I never thought of it like that because I've
Yeah.
always seen it as the step one is it's just anger and that could last for years for some people. I know I've been there in the past as well. But yeah, you put a slightly different spin on it, actually.
I mean, anger's doing what it's meant to do in that case to a
Mm.
certain degree, but when we get stuck in any emotion, that's
Mhm.
when the issues arise. And as you say, like, then you can't move forward.
But do you think there's steps to this? So in terms of the getting to the moving forward part and what that means, in terms of forgiveness, is it we need to forgive ourselves first or the other person or the situation, whatever it may be? Is there a starting point?
I think that ideally, not that we live in an ideal world, it's amazing if there can be an intention to move towards forgiveness. And then I don't believe it's really a linear process, because we all handle things very differently given the specific situation, our personalities, what we might have experienced before. So I think, do we forgive ourselves or do we forgive the other person first? For me, in my experience, through forgiving the other person, you really have to be connected to your heart in order to do that. It's a
Mhm.
deep process of the heart. We need to really dig deep. We need to feel the pain. We need to eventually move into a place, maybe once the anger's processed and the resentment and, whatever else we're feeling, and moving into a place of empathy, understanding, and compassion. And then hopefully, that some of that compassion will flow to the other people, but also through to us as well. It really depends on the situation. I think more often than not, both sides need the love and forgiveness.
I
The reason,
think
let's break it, let's take it back a step, because the reason why I wanted to jump on this theme of forgiveness is firstly because it's been so fundamental in my own healing journey. Like, this was the portal to everything else. And this was
mm,
the step from when I was in dire straits, rock bottom, at the point in which I didn't know whether I wanted to live or die. This was the portal in which I went through in order to move forward into a new era in my life. So I
mm.
had to let go. I had to let go in order to live. If I didn't let go, I feel like it was going to take me out from the inside out, just eating me up. It became like a cancer. And so, even I think like, it's also, for Christians out there, like Jesus, it was like one of his key messages was forgiveness. It was like forgive before you walk into the temple or something like that. You know, he was betrayed and crucified and murdered and humiliated and demeaned and all of that. And then his lesson, his teaching was forgive. You know, so that really tells us everything that we need to know from a spiritual perspective. But when we were speaking about it, I remember you were saying, like, I struggled to forgive. And I thought that was like, oh, we've got to get into this one then. Because I get it, because
Yeah.
it's so hard. It was so hard to forgive that it almost cost me my life in some way. That's how hard it is.
Yeah, but it is though, because for me, mine always will show up more with anger, and I will stay in that sort of point of view. And then I think I've moved on, but then I haven't moved forward. And I think, for me anyway, I know when I've moved on from something, when time between whatever's happened, like it might be years, it might be months. And when that subject comes up, I'm just at peace with it. I'm not in
Yeah.
that rage anymore. I'm not
Yeah.
in that. And sometimes there's not any one way that I've got there.
Do you think
There's
you've got
not.
there ever with important, deep things for you? Have you reached a point with any of them that you feel like, you know, you have moved into a place of peace?
As my therapist will tell me, I've done half of it. We've got to work on the other half. So, and the other half's probably the harder part, I would say. But you mentioned something before about it, like eating people alive and stuff like that. And I've seen that happen to friends and family and stuff like that. So when you said that it was eating you alive, how do you separate yourself from it to even begin the journey?
I think in some ways mine was quite an extreme case. So the lesson came like thick and hard. So I had a lot of clarity around it.
Okay.
You know, I think sometimes when you're taken to the edge, the message becomes very clear. Whereas if you're coasting, you can kind of feel like, well, I can kind of get by. Like you were saying, like, I'm kind of getting by. Like, you know, it comes back every now and then. But otherwise, you're living life fine until maybe the subject comes up again. And then you realize that, oh, it's dormant. But it's not fully processed. So it's somewhere in you, in your psyche, in your body, in your being, it's still present. The hurt, the pain, you know, the anger around it. You're still carrying these feelings around it and this story around it. What was the question?
How you separated yourself from the sort of anger part to even begin the
Oh, to
process?
the anger part. Okay, well, I
Yeah.
think I had just taken anger too far. And, you know, and anger is a very powerful emotion. It's a very important emotion that we should not deny ourselves of or shame
I
ourselves
agree.
around.
I
Should
do
not
agree with
shame
that.
ourselves around. And it's important for our mental, emotional, and physical well-being for us as individuals, but also in how we relate to each other. Anger is important, but it can also be a very destructive energy. And for me, I was so angry, like angry at the world, angry at my dad, angry at my mum. Like I just taking it out on everyone, but mostly, obviously, I was taking it out on me. And then it just like, you just spark, and then it just took my life to a place where it's like, well, you made a real fucking mess of things now, haven't you? So what, you know, it comes to the point, it's like, what are you going to do? You're going to keep going round in this circle, or are you going to give it up and move forward? And so there has to be a choice. A moment where like, I knew I had to put it down in order to move forward. Now, most people will kind of be in this coasting, you know, area where they can kind of just drop it, just push it down a little bit, crack on
Yeah,
with their
yeah.
life. They will keep coming out because anything's unprocessed is still there. It wants to be processed at some point. And the reason why a lot of us will hold on to, there's many reasons why we'll hold on to the anger. One of them is that we've not been allowed to feel the other emotions underlying the anger. But there wasn't maybe permission for us to do that as children. We don't feel safe to do that. So for me, it was a very safe space. And it's also a very powerful space. I'm angry, fuck the world. That's quite an unassailable place to live your life from. No one can touch me. But, you know, it's also not a true place to live your life from, because none of that is true, right? We are all vulnerable, you know, underneath the surface, whether we like to admit it or not. And that was the case for me. I didn't know how to really hold space for myself to be sad. So being angry was just a very safe space for me to stay in. And I had to learn to be sad and be with the feelings of sadness. And then over the years I've spent, and to allow myself to cry and to allow myself to be vulnerable. And there were months in over the last decade where my heart has been broken, and the grief just came out of me, and I cried for months in one of the lockdowns. I just cried and cried and cried and cried. And that was probably where I didn't want to go. And that was still 5 years after I started the forgiveness process.
Oh, so that wasn't even the starting point.
No.
Okay.
You know, so because it takes time, because these deeper feelings, they can only arise with safety. So cultivating safety and trust is a process. And that year on year on year on year, and to get to the deeper and deeper and deeper layers, and given that we are infinitely deep, then we need to continue building more trust and more safety for ourselves. And then we go through more shit. So then again, like, okay, we need more safety for this, create a container for this now. So, and then I think, and then the other aspect of it could be that we just become addicted to certain emotions and certain stories, and that's subconscious to a certain extent. Maybe the ego might to be like, I've been done wrong, I'm not going to accept any culpability.
That's a big one.
Yeah, we don't want to accept any culpability in the situation. And although things might have happened when we're children, by the time we hit our 20s, we then start to become the creators of our own stories. So I realized that, yes, my parents may have done me wrong. Well, at least I thought they had when I was a kid. 20s and 30s, I did all the damage. I made that mess. And maybe you don't want to admit that, because that's a painful truth as well. And then the body just gets addicted to certain emotions. It gets addicted to experiences, and that's a subconscious thing. So we have to understand that if something continues to show up and we don't know why, there may be an element of the body's creating this because it wants to feel that. You see people become addicted to anger, and they don't even mean to be, but the body's looking for that release or that high. People get addicted to sadness. People get addicted to crying. We get addicted to everything. Get addicted to any scenario, any situation that you've experienced as you're growing up. There'll be many subconscious programmings running to recreate those things. That's why you have to take a step back, shine a bit of consciousness around it. Why am I doing this? What is this actually about? What choices do I have here? And what choices do I want to make now? So you feel like you're stuck in the anger
part. Yeah. So part, I do agree. I've let go of a lot of stuff, and similar-ish to what you're saying there. And the other half, maybe because I've yet to unpack it properly, is why it's not really been dealt with. But I know that is my next sort of step. I know that's the next sort of step for me that I want to do and I need to do for myself more than anybody else. But also, when I get into that angry bag, I am not a nice person to be around. And I know for everybody else, it's awful to be around somebody who's going through like stuff, you know. Because for me,
we're all going through stuff, you know, and that.
Yeah. But I struggle when other people are going through their stuff to be around them. So I know that for myself. I see it in other people sometimes. They're going through their stuff and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, okay, that's what I'm like to be around. And you can see it in yourself. And then it doesn't look nice. It doesn't look comfortable. Because when you're doing it, you're just doing it. So you're not feeling bad, like, I don't know, you've ruined an evening or you've ruined a conversation, or someone can't even come and talk to you because they're just worried about you might go off. I never want to live like that. I want to be in a position where I'm able to have people around me that they feel comfortable, I feel comfortable, and just to be able to, if I am in that state, to be all right with it as well. So that's probably the first part. Like sometimes when I am in that state, I used to beat myself up about it, but now I feel like actually I'm okay to be like that. I know when I'm being like that. Sometimes before I wasn't aware I was being like that. Like people around me, like friends and family, had to tell me that I was being like that, and I was like, oh, what do they know? What do they know?
I mean, that happened to me before as well.
When you hold that mirror up, you're like, actually.
Also okay, and I totally agree with you and feel you, because I was having this like anxiety episode last week, and as soon as it hit, I was just like, this needs to stop, this needs to go away quickly, because I always get paranoid. People can sense my energy, and the person I'm thinking about is going to sense my energy and they're going to get weirded out. So it's like, just stop it, quickly stop it. and then that just really doesn't help anything. Actually, it makes it stronger. The feeling is, you're going to put pressure on whatever that feeling that's coming up, or the energy, and that energy is going to push back, especially something like anger or anxiety, which is ultimately fear. And then I just had to take a moment. It was like 20 minutes. I was walking down the road. It was going on and on. My body was going, my heart, my legs are gone. And then I just had to say to myself, like, no, actually, Jenna, this belongs. This 100% belongs. Like, this is welcome here. This is part of your pain. This is part of your wounding. This is part of you. This is the part of you that you probably don't really like, or would rather not be here, but she is here and she needs some love right now. And that immediately there was a shift. It didn't fully subside in that moment, but it started to soften. And so I think that's an amazing step, just like holding space for yourself in that, even having the awareness, the fact that you've even got strong enough presence to start watching what's happening to yourself. And then it's like, okay, how do I want to meet myself in this moment, is amazing. You know, like, it could just be like, you just take yourself away and give yourself some space and just say, look, I can't be around people right now. And that's totally okay, totally allowed to do that. And then go and punch a bag for 20 minutes, get the anger out, and then see what shifts from there. But I do think this whole like trying to manipulate ourselves in the moment can be quite damaging.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that, to be fair. I think that's more long term, that does more damage than trying to just deal with it in that moment. And don't get me wrong, don't like losing it every 5 minutes, that's also a problem. But when you do, you can't like be upset with yourself. But I say all that to say, and maybe I'll ask you this, is when you're aware of this anger situation and all of this sort of stuff, when you start dealing with it, don't you find you have better relationships with other people?
100%. I was a very angry young woman. I mean, when I knew you back in the day, I was angry and I'd like to get into fights and stuff like that. But this is something that really, because I also have, I wouldn't say issues with anger, but anger is definitely somewhere I feel very at home in. And I feel like it can just be very powerful, almost like a drug. Like, I'm angry and the ego likes it and everyone can just fuck off and get out of my way. Like, it's
very destructive.
Very destructive and dangerous. But I noticed something like a few months ago. Someone had done something to me that really pissed me off, but I felt for whatever reason that I just needed to suck it up and not say anything, right? So I mean, one could say take the high ground, but if I don't believe in that is a high ground anyway, just a bit of bypassing. But because of the dynamic of the relationship, I felt like I couldn't say anything, right? And so a couple of days later, I'm at the gym now, and I'm sitting in the steam room, and these girls come in and they're being really fucking loud, and they're coming in with their phones, and then I just switch on them. I'm like, close the door, you're not allowed to have phones in here, blah 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 blah, blah. Kind of like laying into them. And I had a point, but I feel like the way I did it was like, you're actually tapped right now. And then I got on the tube home, and I just had this thought, like, I don't know what, something like I want someone just to push into me so I can just like push them back or something, or like something demented like that, or like I hope someone walks past and just push them onto the track, something bad mind like that. And then I sat down on the tube and I was like, what is wrong with you? Like, also I work at that gym, like, why are you shouting at people? Like, and then I was like, okay, like, you're just angry because of that other situation. And I just, because I really put two twos, and because I hadn't dealt with it and used the anger had come up for me to deal with that particular situation, because I hadn't applied it to that situation, that's what it had come up for. I felt violated, I felt disempowered, I felt wronged. So then I'm stomping about attacking other people. So then I was like, right, you need to use that energy for what it's come up for. So I just messaged the person and just said what I needed to say. It wasn't rudely, but I knew I had to stand up for myself in that moment, because the anger is there to stand up for yourself, not to attack someone, not to, abuse somebody, but to literally stand up for yourself, maybe move them away from you as well in an energetic perspective, or maybe even a physical perspective if you need to in the moment. But for me, it just, when you were speaking, it made me wonder, like, the anger comes up and maybe you're taking, I don't want to say taking it out on, but let's say it's coming out with the people around you. But it sounds like it's stemming from an issue that's nothing to do with them. Is that right? But maybe they triggered it, or
that was going to be my next sort of conversation, is how do you, because I'm aware of that, so I'll be aware of that, and it won't be necessarily anything to do with that person. Sometimes it is that the two can be separate, but sometimes it's the other way around. So someone's like being quite disrespectful or rude, but
Yeah.
I can tell this has nothing to do with me. I know this situation's
Mm,
happening with them or that situation's happening. But then when it happens once, you can sort of like let somebody
yeah.
slide with it. But how do you put the boundary in place for like when they now this is becoming their new normal with you, even though like this other thing's happening and you know that it's nothing to do with you, but now you've got this really weird issue with somebody, and I've been there where I've done it to other people, so I'm aware of it. I can see what it is. But how do you not make it a new normal with somebody that they're just coming at you being mad disrespectful, but you know other things are going on with them, and you're thinking, how much time do I give this?
Yeah, I don't think you give them really any time.
Mm,
And by that I mean like for example, I don't even know about this situation, but I was really premenstrual, like really premenstrual. I was premenstrual, put it that way, like a few
mm,
like last year,
okay.
and I was going to my friend's event, and
Mm,
I was in such a bad mood. And even when I got to the restaurant before the event, I just said to my friend, like, I just want to like punch up people on the tube. Like, feel so it's always on the tube, isn't it? It's something stay away from the tube at all times. And I was saying like I'm premenstrual, and often that you kind of get a bly with other women when you're like that, because you're kind of saying like I'm not in a good place. But
okay.
then I just proceeded just to be like really quite rude and cantankerous to my friends all night. And I don't really know. I don't really know because I'm just in my own whatever, my own
Yeah.
zone. And then a few days later, my friend like calls me up and she's like, "You were like really inappropriate and like out of order."
Mm,
And I was like, "What?" And she was like, "You said certain things to me." And I was like, "Did I?" And part of me wants to go, "Well, you knew I was premenstrual. Like, did you do?"
mm,
But in the end, like I just had to listen, and I appreciated her coming to me and saying this, because I didn't have the awareness to know that I was behaving like that. I also don't want to behave like that. We don't really ever want to take things
yeah.
out on our loved
No.
ones or anyone. Like that's
Mm,
just not how we want to be. And so I really had to thank her for having the balls to have this difficult conversation with me about it. So if there's disrespect, okay, you can give them a little, if it becomes a pattern, then people need to either you've got to tell them, or if you feel there's no point, then maybe you need a bit of space from them. But it's not
mm,
acceptable to
mm.
behave like that, and people need to know.
And I think for me, now that you said that about your friend, that's always been important. People pulling you up
It's so
and telling
important.
you is so important. But you got to be ready to receive it, because if you're all defensive towards it, you're never going to get anywhere. But that for me was starting point. People are close to me pulling me up, and I'm like, oh,
It's a deep thing experience, like in these
very
small things,
humbling.
very humbling. And you've got a good friend there who will
Yeah,
take what's the word? Just take the trouble to come and do that.
yeah.
So let's get back to the forgiveness thing, because I feel like you said some quite deep things. Like you're halfway through, but I want to know what is the half that you've done? Like
Myself, I would say that's one
you've forgiven
half.
yourself.
Yeah, for just a lot of like angry situations I've been in, and maybe
Amazing.
just not always treating people the best. So I've tried to forgive myself first and foremost for that, and then going forward, obviously living my life in a better way. Getting therapy helps massively. I think that's always something that's another subject for another day. But yeah, I think first and foremost myself, and then I guess just the other half is just the other half, which is like family, and certain things can like easily trigger you, or me anyway, and you just think, I'm not quite there yet. Like 20, 30 years later, that one little thing can still get me there.
Well, I think families have that power regardless of whether you've forgiven them or not. My mum can say one thing and I'm literally wild. That's the power that we have, over each other as families. And I think, if we can, we have to find better ways to engage with each other. And I think that happens organically, because when you start doing the work, you start showing up differently. So they have no choice but to kind of show up differently, because you're changing. So they kind of will shift with you in some way.
Mm.
But I think,
But you've got, so for me, I'm an only child. So you got siblings, right? Sisters. And I
yeah,
guess you guys bicker as sisters and stuff like that. So that's new for an only child. That's a very strange dynamic to see. two people who are sisters, brothers, brother and
Yeah.
sister, whatever, arguing, and then 5 minutes later they're cool with each other. I've never really experienced that level. So that's also for me why it's been a little bit more difficult and a little bit more tricky, because I've never experienced being in that situation. It's like if you're going at it with somebody, 5 minutes later you're not going to be cool with each other. It's not that sibling-y type of relationship, if that makes any sense. I've
Yeah.
never experienced that part in life, but it's been interesting to see everybody else who's got siblings. Everyone has problems with their siblings. Just watching the dynamics and just seeing how 1 minute they're at each other's throats and then the next minute they're at dinner together.
Yeah, I mean, that could just be part of their dynamic. But I think when the real pain has been inflicted, from one human to another, to really set yourself free from it, there needs to be deep work around it. And I think when you're like, okay, let's say you're talking about forgiving your family, and forgiving my dad was really like a pivotal moment in my life, where I was like, I hate him and I feel so wronged by him and he's the worst, and I'm the victim in all of this. And there was so much pain that I was carrying within that, around that. And then just at that point where I was like, wow, Jenna, like, you need to change your life. So one of my teachers at the time said to me, what do you need to do in order to kind of move forward, or to even have a good relationship with him? I said, there's no point talking about having a good relationship with him, because that will never fucking happen. So let's not even talk about that. And he was like, no, but let's say that let's just suspend all disbelief and say, like, what would you need to do? And I said, well, I guess I'd have to, be calmer, get off the drink and the drugs, because that would just cause chaos when I was mash up, and arguments and all sorts. And then I was like, and I guess I'd have to forgive. And he was like, yeah, you'd have to forgive. And we went through a process that day, and he was asking me what I wanted to forgive him for. And I just felt like there's two things that helped me. There was one which was like, look, I needed to do it for myself. I just had to do it. I had to come to a point in my life where it's like I had to make a choice, and it is a choice. And I was really like, life is going to be much better, as you say, like, you're taking it out on people. It's hindering some of your relationships. It's like becoming an impulse when you don't want it to be, or it's becoming almost involuntary. It's coming up for time. You're out of control by the sounds of it at some point, right? It's kind of taking you over at times when you're like, you don't want it, you kind of would rather just clear it. So I was the same. And then the next piece of it was around, I think when bad things have happened, we're in a lot of pain, and especially when we've been children, or very, very, let's say, like, innocent in a certain situation. Like, for me, I feel like you need to go higher. Like, you need to elevate to a higher place, because all the logic and rational will just drive you mad if you get in your head about it, trying to think of, well, they did this and they did that and they're like this and they're like that. You just will go round and round in circles. You'll never have the solution. But I just had to just elevate to a higher plane and just be like, do you know what? We're just fucking humans. And he's just made some big mistakes, and he didn't really know what he's doing. And I have also shown up in my own ways also as a total terrorist. So I can't even say I'm innocent in the whole thing, but as a child, I definitely felt innocent. And just if we elevate and we just see each other as just like human beings, like, we're all very flawed. And it's very rare, unless you're a psychopath, and even then you probably have some compassion for psychopaths, like, very rarely is someone trying to hurt the other person. They literally don't know, or they're stuck in their own pattern. So the empathy has to come in at some point, and the understanding of, like, okay, like, they really don't know. They really don't know. And also, I was a child, and maybe my experience of it was also a bit warped as well. So that's the only thing, like, we have to find a higher perspective in order to set ourselves free. I guess that's deep connection to heart as well. So it's just working deeper into the pain of it all, allowing yourself to feel all the feelings, and then making that choice. But it can't be a choice from the head. It has to be a choice from the heart.
Yeah. I agree with that. And I think that's why when I started the conversation, I said, you're probably one of the few people I feel who's sort of done that. So you said all of this about you, especially your dad, but I know you and your dad have got an incredible relationship now, which is, when you listen to the stories and then you see you and your dad now, it'll be like, wow, how has she managed that? But it's everything that you've just discussed.
Yeah. And it's been going on for 10 years, this process of forgiveness. Even when I forgave him, he felt it. He felt it pretty much immediately, because I'm just not being like nasty and provocative and mean to him all the time. So he's suddenly like, whoa, like, and this is the thing. People will say, like, you don't need to chat to the other person in order to forgive them. You don't need them to say sorry in order for you to forgive them. It's nothing to do with the other person. It's a choice that you make in your own process, because you decide you want to be free and you want to have a more beautiful life and you want to heal. And by proxy, you set them free. By proxy, you set them free too. So it's a gift that actually, we probably don't want to hear about this at the moment, but you will be giving a gift, a karmic gift to the other people involved as well. And I've told this story before, but I remember him saying to me once, like, I don't know what's changed, but he goes to me, I don't know what's changed. And I said, well, you know, in my probably a bit of a smug way, I said, well, you know, like, I forgave you. And he was like, and he went like, I don't know what you forgave me for, but I'm glad you did, because you're much nicer to me now. And it just said it all to me. It was like, this guy doesn't have a fucking clue. Why do I spend my life, like, the bane of my life, destroying my life for a man who doesn't even fucking know? What a waste of time is that? Or trying to show him, look what you've done to me. Brrr. The only person you're hurting is yourself, because he doesn't fucking notice. He doesn't know what's going on. That is the level of consciousness that I was dealing with. Sorry, Dad, I love you loads, but, you know, he just didn't get it. So cool, not everyone's going to get it. So it's really, it's on you to do it. It's up to you to do it. You don't, no one's making you do it. It's up to you. But that like, life on the other side is much, much better.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned how long it takes, because this is not a 2-week process. It can take years. Basically.
Years, it's a lifetime.
Yeah. So I guess, because we recorded for we've got some, I feel like we've talked about forgiveness and how to move forward and stuff.
Yeah.
And we can cut this bit out if we have to.
Yeah.
But the next phase and part of this phase would be therapy and therapy sessions and how they help with all of this.
Amazing.
In people's lives. It's definitely helped me. It's helped a lot of people I know as well. There's a lot of people I know who should be doing it, and I know they get a lot of benefit out of it. And I know it's helped you tremendously a lot. But I know when we are from a certain background, it's very taboo to even talk about doing things like that. But it's a massive part of this whole process, training ground. Part of it definitely needs to be therapy.
100%. You're so much more conscious now. You know how to navigate it. Sometimes I think feeling the pain is just so difficult. Yeah. And that's why I think I guess we will talk about it on another episode of like having that therapist or that person there to hold space for you.
And raving and drinking and drugs and all that isn't the answer. It does feel like it at the time.
It's a little bit of an answer.
At the time, it really feels like when you're in your 20s and stuff, in your teens, it really is the answer.
Well, it's like with anything, it's how you do it, isn't it? For me now, I love it. I'll go out and have the best time. It's a celebration of life. But when you're younger and you're just escaping, it's just...
Oh, yeah. It's just, that is your life, escapism.
Well, I guess when the words failed us, it was a type of therapy for us to be in the music and be in connection and be, you know, with that togetherness. It was in a way of a type of therapy. But then I'm
very grateful for it though. Like I would do it all again.
Let's do it then. I'm ready. Let's go. Always. Joke, not joke.